On September 14, 1986, Nancy Reagan delivered her infamous Just Say No speech from the West Wing of the White House. Reagan's address marked the beginning of a larger campaign, one rooted in fear of the possible effects that widespread crack usage would have on American society, particularly its effects on pregnant women and their children. Citing a testimony from a Florida hospital, the First Lady gave an account of a child who had 2 strokes within just their first month of life. Research linking crack usage to adverse health conditions has continued to guide our aggressive drug policy. However, a connection that has remained underexplored is the relationship between crack and poverty, until now. A federally funded 23-year study by Dr. Hallam Hurt, Albert Einstein Medical Center's chair of neonatology and UPenn's professor of pediatrics, concludes that poverty is worse for children than prenatal crack exposure. In order to better understand these staggering developments and their potential impact on current socioeconomic policy, we must first examine the environment prior to and during the initiation of the study, then analyze how the study was conducted and what data led to its conclusion, before finally looking at some implications of a study that, according to Salon of July 23, 2013, debunks the myth of the crack baby. America's inner cities were deteriorating rapidly during the 1980s due to increasing poverty rates and the wave of crack usage. According to the Economic Policy Institute of September 18, 2013, since President Lyndon B. Johnson declared the war on poverty in 1964, the sharpest increases in the poverty rate occurred during the early 1980s, as the number of Americans below the poverty line increased from 11.7 in 1978 to over 15% in 1983. Further, CNN of January 6, 2014 reports that between 1979 and 1987, the real wages of high school graduates declined by a staggering 18%. According to researchers from Harvard University, this period of growing income inequality coincided with the increased use of crack, particularly in America's inner cities. Among those who began using were pregnant women. A report in the July 22, 2013 Philadelphia Inquirer recalls a 1989 study that found nearly 1 in 6 newborns born into Philadelphia city hospitals had mothers who tested positive for cocaine use. Increasing crack distribution and the growing income inequality within the United States inevitably compromised the safety of America's cities. But rather than address the underlying issue of poverty, politicians decided to take a hardline stance against drugs. Soon after, according to the aforementioned CNN article, investments in urban renewal, housing, and transportation were slashed, and services to the poor were cut back. By 1988, President Ronald Reagan declared that the war on poverty was over, and that poverty won. Instead of fighting against poverty, President Reagan pursued a new war, referred to as the war on drugs. This campaign, along with a wave of media hysteria, vilified crack users, especially mothers who gave birth to cocaine-exposed children. Ultimately, this led many to fear of a lost generation, coined by the media as crack babies. They denoted an underclass of children unable to care for themselves. Our political priorities further stigmatize crack babies, portraying them as a quantifiable social and economic burden. On the other hand, their mothers were viewed as criminals who inflicted irreparable damage on society. Amidst the concerns over the well-being of crack babies and the potential burden that they would place on American society, Dr. Hallam Hurt organized a study of 224 babies born into Philadelphia's Albert Einstein Medical Center between the years of 1989 and 1992. The children were divided into 2 groups, half with mothers who tested positive for cocaine use and half were children who were unexposed. Although prenatal crack exposure has been linked to prematurity, Hurt's study only enrolled full-term babies, so that the possible effects of prematurity did not skew the results. The children were then evaluated every 12 months on average, and their mothers were drug tested repeatedly throughout the study. To their surprise, researchers consistently found no significant differences between the 2 groups of children. For instance, at age 4, the average IQ for exposed children was 79. The average IQ for unexposed children was 81.9, a difference of less than 3 points. However, both groups of children paled in comparison to the national average for children of the same age group, which ranged from 90 to 109. At age 6, a fourth of the children in both groups tested in the abnormally low range, on tests for math and letter and word recognition. As the study progressed, researchers attempted to eliminate lurking environmental variables. However, because all the children came from low-income families, 81% had seen someone get arrested, 74% had heard gunshots, 35% had seen someone get shot, 19% had seen a dead body outside, all by the age of 7. The frequency of such experiences, combined with the similar cognitive abilities and test scores, led Dr. Hallam Hurt to a startling conclusion: that poverty is a more powerful influence on the outcome of inner-city children than gestational exposure to cocaine. Although the results of the study themselves offer valuable insight into our society, it's imperative we draw a few implications from the study, namely economic disparity, the role of race in the war on drugs, and the criminalization of poverty. First, this study has a definitive impact on our perceptions of poverty. According to the Christian Science Monitor of January 5th, 2014, since mid-2009, 95% of income gains have gone to the top 1% of U.S. households. Through this study, we learned that the consequences of poverty are perhaps greater than anticipated. Thus, reducing poverty will likely reduce other social issues, such as drug use and violence, and even the learning gap, ultimately better enabling us to address these issues at their roots. As social stratification has continued to rise, Time magazine of April 2nd, 2013 reports that the United States has spent over $1 trillion fighting the war on drugs over the past 4 decades. This research challenges us to prioritize and consider whether we can direct our resources more effectively. Next, it's no secret that race plays a key role in the war on drugs. According to the National Institute of Justice, updated February 2013, nearly 1 in 9 black men between the ages of 20 to 34 are incarcerated. What's more, the Drug Policy Alliance updated daily notes that while only 14% of drug users are black, these users comprise 37% of those who are arrested on drug offenses. Further, current drug laws within the United States facilitate institutional racism. According to the New York Times of December 19, 2013, prior to the 2010 Fair Sentencing Act, the sentencing disparity between crack offenses and cocaine offenses was at a staggering 100-to-1 ratio. While the act has lowered this disparity, it remains at 18-to-1. Since crack is primarily used by low-income individuals who are more likely to be African American, we must consider the role of race in both the depiction and stigmatization of crack in society. Perhaps by redirecting our focus from crack to poverty, this study can have an impact on the racial depictions of drug users, as well as the disproportionate incarceration rates. Finally, Hurt's conclusion that poverty is as damaging to a child's development as crack exposure could be used to further marginalize impoverished individuals. If exposing a child to crack is a crime because of its negative effects on that child's development, and if poverty is accepted as equally damaging, a case could be made for prosecuting mothers living in poverty for knowingly putting their children at risk. The resulting question, as with the war on drugs, is will we choose to focus our resources on rehabilitation or incarceration? After discussing the rise of crack in America and the specifics of Hallam Hurt's Crack Baby study, we were able to draw some important implications from these surprising research findings. The negative effects of crack cocaine and prenatal crack exposure described by Nancy Reagan in her speech can't simply be dismissed. But neither, it seems, can the equal, if not more damaging effects of poverty.